Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Back in PCM 22, this is now PCM 24 that we're looking at, but back in PCM 22, a new mechanic slash database management tool was introduced. That tool redefined how new writers entered into the database, including a quantification piece that brought in lots of new writers into the database, many of which would fade out in time. But the new mechanic inadvertently brought a whole new play style to Pro Cycling Manager. We're going to do a tutorial here on how to take that play style and use it and provide you with the information you need to be successful with it. This tutorial is going to apply to that first edition in PCM 22, and then also the subsequent PCM 23 and now PCM 24, the third edition, since that change was introduced. Now, one minor thing was changed between PCM 22 and PCM 23. So far, in my experience, I have not seen a difference with PCM 24, but as it has just released, to my knowledge, it is the same as the past edition. I will quickly provide an update if there is a change within PCM 24. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty of how this works. On the surface, the important element seemed to be the scouts. The reality is it's something much deeper than this. Nation by nation and region by region, each and every country in the game has a popularity of cycling and training structure attribute. These two attributes combine for the development of new riders every year. The two attributes begin with a range of 1-1 and scale up to a maximum of 10-10, with a single nation in the entire database at that 10-10. What these two attributes do in the creation of new riders, because there are other moving parts here, such as a knowledge of territory, the level of your scouts, their level within a region. All of these factors only dictate your awareness of riders that are created. However, what determines the creation of those riders is down to just these two attributes. Popularity, the first one. The higher this value, the more juniors there are to be detected in the country. Meaning the database is going to create more potential athletes that are there. The training structure determines the quality, how competitive those athletes are. So to simplify that a step further, popularity is quantity of riders, where training is quality of riders coming up within the database. In a regular playthrough, how you would go about this is using the scouts that you employ to scout the best regions possible. You want to make sure that Belgium is a scouted region. Why? Because the best cyclists are going to end up coming out of there. You've got a chance to get in there and acquire those talents before anybody else does, if you can identify them. At the same time, you want to do what is best for the scouts that you have. If your scouts are Colombian, there's no reason for you to not be scouting Colombia. So be careful in the scouts that you choose. But this is not a tutorial about scouting. This is a tutorial regarding a new and specific way to play the game. That specific way is to add a challenge upon yourself beyond what the base game offers within career mode, where you pick a specific state or a specific region or a specific continent. Whatever limitations are up to you to decide how you want to play the game. In PCM 22, I played a develop a continent playthrough based in Asia. In PCM 23, I did the same thing in Africa. And in PCM 24, I'm going to be doing a similar type series, but broken down into a smaller region now, the Balkans. The rules in which you play a build a continent or build a region or build a state challenge, what the rules entail is of your own making, your own design. But a basic set of rules would be limiting yourself riders from the specific continent or region that you select. Meaning, as you do a playthrough, you can only take the riders from the specific set of nations that you are choosing to play with in the playthrough. And so while you may grow strong enough and powerful enough and have enough money to sign a Jonas Vingegaard, because he competes in a nation that is not part of yours, you will have to self-manage and not select that particular rider. Now, one of the easier things about doing a type of playthrough of that style is you only need to search those specific nations and you only need to scout those specific nations. If you are not permitting yourself the ability to sign a Polish rider, if that's not among your eligible choices, there's no reason for you to scout Poland, as I would be doing in this particular playthrough, or any part of the British Isles. If you are doing a Balkans playthrough, you only need to scout the Balkans. With this limitation, what you're doing is drastically narrowing the pool of riders you have to select from. One thing to be careful of with one such as this, if you choose a specific nation, such as Kosovo, something's going to happen. The specific thing that you're going to put yourself in trouble with is this. Here is the list of riders from Kosovo. As a 1-1 nation, the database does not begin with a single rider from that nation. You need to be careful in your selection. If you're going to choose a one-nation build, make sure that there's at least enough riders to begin the game so that you have something to go off of. But the smallest rated nations, the quantity ones, the popularity low nations, it's hard to find. They come few and far between, and it can be many years before even a single rider will appear from that nation within the database because the rating is so low. So be careful that you have at least enough of a pool of riders to at least put together a team. Now, anything beyond that is up to you on what you want to limit yourself to. Do you want to limit yourself to a dozen riders initially? Do you want to limit yourself to 100 riders or hundreds or thousands? That choice is up to you, and the quality, the training structure will drastically alter the difficulty. This essentially comes down as a difficulty setting. I play the game on an extreme. Many longtime players play the game on extreme as well. Most of us will find that even then, the game can still be quite easy. If you sign the best riders in a very short period of time, especially the way that the signings work within this game, you get a head start on everybody else. And within a couple years, if you have the finances and popularity for it, you could have half of the best riders in the world within a couple of seasons, all on your team. You think Jumbo-Visma's stacked in real life? Imagine what you can do within a couple of years. And those who don't restrict themselves, well, the obvious thing is to get the best riders. It's how you're supposed to play the game. And this offers a neat way to not artificially do something, but to limit yourself in such a way to offer a significant challenge to the game. And that challenge can scale accordingly. How much of a challenge are you looking for? Europe contains most of the top nations in the game. I would never recommend doing a build a continent with Europe when the best riders are already there. That's not much of a limitation. Jayco Alula is a team that already kind of fits the mold of an Oceania team. It's certainly an option. There's only 3 countries, but with Australia being so strong, it would kind of be an easy mode to start out with. But even then, it still limits your pool quite a bit, and it doesn't make it an automatic that you go to the top of the standings. There's already a significant drop-off to New Zealand as a 5-5 nation, and Guam, this year included in the Oceania list, is a 1-1 nation. Second, probably easiest option that you could set up for yourself is to do the Americas. Now, the issue with doing the Americas is there's a few very powerful nations. If you do all of the Americas, you're still going to have a pretty easy playthrough. Central America's top nation is Costa Rica at 4-3. That's a tough nation to But Colombia as a standalone is an 8-8 nation, meaning you're going to get a lot, both in quality and quantity, of top riders. Within North America, the US has a 7-6, which is also going to provide a pretty good amount. Canada at 5-5 is not too shabby. Argentina at 5-4 and Brazil at 4-5 will still produce the occasional decent rider. The big thing to watch out for, though, is the simple fact that Colombia and the United States are going to produce a lot of high-level talent, meaning it's a pretty easy game mode. If you wanted something a bit tougher, take those two nations out. Don't sign Colombian riders. Don't scout Colombian riders. Don't sign American riders. Or choose any number of restricted nations to remove from that pool, and you are giving yourself a tougher, higher level playthrough. The third easiest playthrough that you could do in this game mode would be in Asia only, where there are a few strong nations. You can see Kazakhstan has a 6-4 rating. South Korea might not produce much quality, but with a popularity of 6, there's a lot of riders to at least get you going. And Japan with a 7-5 offers quite a bit of both quantity and quality. The final build a continent is Africa. It's a pretty tough one. In my series, I had a lot of bad luck with development. We'll talk about development here momentarily. But with just two regions, Africa North and South, Eritrea at 6-3 will produce a decent amount of talent. Rwanda has a 6-2 and South Africa has a 5-5. Eritrea, South Africa become kind of the two beds of most of the talent you would get within Africa, and neither one is very powerful. Makes for a pretty tough run through to try to build it up, especially if you're trying to build up other countries beyond those 2 or 3 more powerful ones if you count Rwanda. Within Europe, you could get down to a difficult playthrough by getting to regional only. But it would really depend on the region. One country that you could definitely do a nation only playthrough on is Austria with a 6-7. It's pretty strong, it's pretty powerful, and it's got a little bit of room for improvement. But you can't develop much more beyond a 6-7. I'll get into what those limits are here in a moment. But the Balkans is a very difficult option. The top nation, Romania, is a 4-1. Croatia is a 3-3. Serbia a 3-1. Bulgaria a 3-1. There is just enough nations here to give you a pool to start with. Less than 30 riders. And none of them very strong. And with a couple nations of a training structure of 3, that's very little quality found within those 30 riders. And very few new riders will come in on a yearly basis until you find a way to raise the ratings of the nations here within. The Balkans is an extremely difficult region to try to build. The Baltic states, in one way, is going to be both tougher and easier. Estonia is a higher rated nation with a 4-4. Lithuania is a 4-5, and Latvia is a 4-5. But there's only 3 countries with a limited popularity rating for each of them and a decent training structure, but not a great training structure. The Baltics could be a great playthrough. You're probably going to get that 30 plus riders, but at a higher quality than what you're going to get in the Balkans. But it's only 3 nations, and so trying to grow those 3 particular nations and only selecting riders from those 3 nations is quite challenging, but definitely not the most challenging series you're going to play. Similar difficulty level, Central Europe, Czech Republic, Slovak Republic, and Hungary offer similar ratings to those other 3 nations and then also come in at exactly 3 nations. Eastern Europe could be on that list as well. Russia has definitely a bit higher popularity and training structure comparatively. Ukraine also has a pretty decent number for that. Belarus and Moldova are definitely a little bit lower, this would be a little bit easier playthrough than those other two regions. The problem with trying to do a single nation is to have enough riders in the pool and to have enough room for growth to actually make it worthwhile. For the most part, I wouldn't recommend doing a nation one, certainly not for your first playthrough. As you do it, as you attempt it, you're going to learn a lot more about how it works, how it functions, and you'll tweak your ideas as you go along and come up with your own ideas. But when doing a playthrough of this sort, what you need to understand is how the mechanics work regarding the popularity and the training attributes. Because the whole concept, the whole idea behind this is to build that nation or build that region or build that continent. Meaning you want bigger, better riders coming out of that nation in time. New gen riders are produced each year, and they are based off of that popularity and training structure for each nation. But the popularity and training attributes are dynamic. They change. Now, as of PCM 23, they only go one direction, and that is up. They cannot go down. So years of performing poorly will not see a training structure or a popularity decrease. In order for them to go up, you have to do one of two specific things. And even if you accomplish those two things, there is no automatic. Even then, it's odds. It's a dice roll on whether you're going to actually get that progression or not. In PCM 22, it appeared that there was no dice roll, that it was just simply automatic. You achieve the required element, you get the upgrade. From PCM 23, the dice roll then limited how often this would occur, meaning it happened less frequently. In order to raise the training structure, aka quality of riders within a nation, there is only a single way that occurs, and that is through the points system, the rankings. For this one, I have not learned specific thresholds level to level, but the threshold does increase on a level to level basis, and it is done in one way and one way only, and that is through individual ranking. It has nothing to do with your nation rating. You can see why Belgium is number one. But if you were doing a playthrough on, say, the Czech Republic having 814 points split up amongst many different riders, you can see there are 8 riders on this list, or at least you can see part of the list, that account for those 800 points. But it's not down to the group as a whole. It is down to the number one top individual within the nation. The highest rated Czech rider, Tupalek, 157 points, is 348th overall. For a mid-tier rated nation, that is not going to be enough points. But it's also not going to take 7,000 points to see the Czech Republic's training rating increase. With my team, Arnaud Damar is ranked 85th in the world and is a French rider. He is not the type of rider who is going to be anywhere near the level required to see the training structure in a strong nation like France see an increase. But as you go through your team, you may find an outlier, and this team really doesn't have it. Ocean of Poland is going to be the closest to anything that would mimic what we're looking for with this. Latvia is a 4-5 nation. Training structure is what we're talking about right now. It's a training structure of 5. That's a pretty decent training structure score already as is. But Latvia is just 23rd in the world rankings with 1,500 points. And when you look specifically at their rider pool, Tom Scoins gets most of those points, over 1,000 of them. And Tom Scoins is 65th in the world rankings. Not a great place to be, and 1,000 points is not a great number. And it certainly would not be the number required to raise the training structure of Latvia. However, if Tom Scoins was to develop a bit, and if Tom Scoins was on your team and he was the focal point of your team and he was your leader, and he had a tremendous season, and we saw his number jump to something, high enough to crack, say, the top 10. If he had 3,000 plus points, pretty confident that 3,000 plus points at the end of the year, January 1st, is when training structures are assessed. And if Tom Scoins of Latvia had 3,000 plus points and had cracked the top 10, pretty sure that that would be enough for the dice roll to be triggered, and Latvia would have a pretty good chance that on January 1st they would see their 5 training points become 6, progress by 1 point. The lower the nation's rating, the easier it would be to find gains. If they have a training structure of 1 point is not going to do it, but it would be a pretty small amount to find the difference between a training structure of 1 and a training structure of 2. But again, it comes down to one individual rider and their accumulated total of points over the course of the season. To improve popularity of cycling ratings within a nation, it comes down to victories. Victories in stages, victories in overall races. Either one of those will do it. The minimum popularity rating is a 1. So obviously you can't go below that. So there is no threshold for a level 1. But beginning at popularity level 2, there is a threshold that needs to be met. And that threshold rises for each subsequent level all the way through popularity 7. There is no further boost beyond popularity 7. You cannot get any higher than a 7. On balance, it would appear that 1 out of every 5 times, or 20% of the time that you achieve the required threshold, will you actually see the popularity gains. And it might take you quite a few attempts to get through and see these things happen. Next up is the threshold for each of those levels 2 through 7. First, I want to thank Kieta Holde for doing the dirty work and getting in there and figuring out what the threshold was for each of these levels, running tests to make it happen. I've done plenty of tests myself for tutorials in the past, and they have been a lot of work. So I appreciate the time and effort that you put in for this one. Definitely want to give you credit for that. But here are the thresholds for each of the popularity levels. For a popularity 2, any 1.1 or 2.1 race has a chance, if you win it, to gain a popularity of 2 from a popularity 1. 1 pro and 2 pro races give you a chance at a popularity of 3. World Tour B or World Tour C races give you a chance for popularity of 4. World Tour A races for popularity 5. The Giro, La Vuelta, majors have a chance for popularity 6. And finally, only victory in the Tour de France gives you a chance at a popularity 7 rating boost. So in order to have a successful series, depends on what your goals are, but if your goal is to build a nation up, it's going to take many years. Training structure is something that can only level up each January 1st, so it could take a lot of years to get the training structure to the level you want it to be. Popularity can be done via wins, but you have to get good enough to start winning higher and higher level races as you go along. Getting those first low level races can be a little bit easier, but if you have a very, very low quality rider, it could be a little tricky to make it happen to even get the low level victories. But if you can luck out and find one high quality rider, that one high quality rider can take you a long ways. They can get you the victories that you need to see the popularity boost within their nation. They can also provide you enough points to get that training structure to boost up as well, to hopefully have the database produce more and more riders of quality within that nation, making your playthrough easier as time goes on and helping you climb from Continental to Continental Pro, and if you're lucky enough, to World Tour and beyond. I would definitely recommend writing down the thresholds because it makes a big difference going into a race if you know, and especially if you're targeting trying to get a victory with a rider of a specific country that could see a boost. You might not be riding for your number one rider sometimes. If your number one rider can't get a boost and the race doesn't matter that much to you, you could be going out with your number 3 rider because that number 3 rider is from a different nation that could benefit from a boost if they were to win that race. I have found myself at times altering my lineup in the final kilometer to make sure that the right rider from the nation that would get a boost is racing through and crossing the line first, taking the win away from a teammate who would otherwise not benefit from it. But it definitely leads to some interesting decisions in how you go through to help boost your pool as time goes on. It's a fun way to play the game. I would definitely recommend it. If you like what you saw here, be sure to hit that like button. Also, if you want to save this video, come back to it later. If not, write it down. Those thresholds will definitely help you out along the way. Appreciate you being here. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.